The bank statement trembled in my hands, numbers blurring into meaningless shapes as my stomach clenched. 3 missed mortgage payments. Impossible. I checked again, willing the figures to change, but they remained stubbornly fixed on the page, mocking my certainty about our financial stability. I'm Maeve, and until this moment, I thought I knew everything about my life, my marriage, our business. 27 years of marriage teaches you to read between the lines, to anticipate the rhythms of your shared existence. Or so I believed. There must be some mistake, I told the bank representative over the phone, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. We have automatic payments set up. I'm showing those were cancelled 3 months ago, Mrs. Thompson. By your husband. The words hit like a physical blow. Derek hadn't mentioned any changes to our finances. Hell, just last week we'd discussed renovating the guest bathroom. I see, I managed, scribbling down the details. And the new payment arrangement? The account receiving transfers is under Linda Thompson's name. Linda. My mother-in-law. Of course. I ended the call and sat at my kitchen island, the granite cold under my palms. The house felt different now, every familiar surface holding potential secrets. The antique clock Linda gave us for our anniversary ticked accusingly from the wall. The front door opened, and Derek's heavy footsteps echoed through the foyer. Honey? Something smells good. I'd forgotten about the pot roast in the slow cooker, the dinner I'd planned before everything shifted. In the kitchen, I called back, sliding the bank statement under a magazine. He appeared in the doorway, his silver-streaked hair disheveled from the wind, his smile genuine. That's what hurt the most, how normal he looked, how untroubled. Rough day at the office? I asked, watching his face carefully. The usual. Mom stopped by, wanted to discuss some investment opportunities. He loosened his tie, heading for the wine rack. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Funny, I said, my voice hollow. I've been meaning to talk to you too. About the mortgage payments you've been redirecting to your mother's account. The wine bottle slipped from his grasp, shattering against the floor. Red liquid spread across the tiles like blood, seeping into the grout lines. Derek's face drained of color, his mouth working soundlessly. Maeve, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explain secretly funneling our money to Linda without telling your wife of 27 years. He stepped toward me, careful to avoid the broken glass. It's not what you think. Mom needed. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare tell me what Linda needed. Tell me what I need, Derek. Tell me why I shouldn't walk out that door right now. 3 days after the mortgage revelation, I came home to find Linda's Mercedes in our driveway, its trunk open and stuffed with designer luggage. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Derek appeared on the front steps, carrying another suitcase. It's temporary, he said before I could speak. Mom's condo is being renovated. How temporary? The words tasted like acid. Just a few weeks. He wouldn't meet my eyes. She's taking the guest room. Linda emerged from the house, immaculate in her cream cashmere sweater. Maeve, darling. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Derek insisted when he heard about my situation. Of course he did. I forced a smile that felt like broken glass. What a surprise. Inside, Linda had already rearranged my living room furniture, pushing my grandmother's antique reading chair into a dark corner. The air reeked of her signature perfume, drowning out the lavender candles I'd lit that morning. I made dinner, Linda announced. Nothing fancy, just Derek's favorite pot roast recipe. The one I taught him growing up. My stomach clenched. Pot roast, the same meal I'd been making when I discovered the diverted mortgage payments. The same recipe I'd perfected over decades of marriage, thinking it was Derek's favorite because it was mine. At dinner, Linda dominated the conversation, her voice honey-sweet as she detailed her renovation plans. The contractor says it could take longer than expected. These things always do. How fortunate you have somewhere to stay, I said, cutting my meat with precise movements. Family takes care of family. Linda reached across the table to pat Derek's hand. Isn't that right, sweetheart? Derek nodded, shoveling food into his mouth to avoid speaking. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Speaking of family, Linda continued, dabbing her lips with a napkin. I was thinking about Grace's wedding next month. Such a shame you two never experienced that joy yourselves. Having children, I mean. The fork clattered from my hand. Derek's head snapped up. Mother. Oh, I'm sorry. Linda's eyes widened with practiced innocence. Was that insensitive? I just meant it must be difficult, watching others live that dream. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood. Excuse me. Maeve, wait, Derek called after me. But I was already halfway up the stairs, my vision blurring. In our bedroom, I locked the door and pressed my forehead against the cool window glass. Below, I could see Linda's Mercedes, claiming its space in our driveway like she'd claimed everything else. My phone buzzed, a text from Sam, coffee tomorrow? You sound like you need to talk. I typed back quickly, yes. And bring those real estate listings you mentioned. Just in case. The office was quiet when I arrived early, determined to find answers in Derek's computer while he attended his morning meeting. Linda's renovation had stretched into its third week, and something about her constant calls with contractors felt off. I hadn't planned on becoming a spy in my own business, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Derek's password hadn't changed in 15 years, our wedding date, of all things. The irony wasn't lost on me. The file labeled Mother's Trust caught my eye immediately. Inside, spreadsheets detailed systematic transfers dating back 18 months. Not just our mortgage payments, everything. Company profits, personal savings, even the emergency fund I'd built over decades. What are you doing? I jumped. Grace stood in the doorway, her face pale. Derek's niece, Linda's granddaughter, looked more like a scared child than the confident marketing director she'd become. I could ask you the same thing, I said, minimizing the screen. Your meeting's not until 10. She closed the door behind her. I know about the money, Aunt Maeve. Grandmother's been. She's been taking everything. My hands stilled on the keyboard. How long have you known? 3 months. Grace's voice cracked. She told me it was temporary, that Uncle Derek agreed to help with her medical bills. But last week, I overheard her on the phone about property in Florida. The pieces clicked into place. The renovation lie. The constant undermining. The financial drain. She's planning to convince Derek to move there with her, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. Grace nodded, tears spilling. She's already bought the house. In his name. My phone buzzed, a text from Derek, where are you? Mother needs signatures for the new business accounts. New accounts. Of course. I have proof, Grace whispered, pulling out a USB drive. Bank statements, recordings of her phone calls, everything. I've been collecting it since I realized. The door opened again. Linda stood there, her smile sharp as a blade. Collecting what, dear? Grace shoved the drive into my hand behind the desk. I slipped it into my pocket as Linda glided into the room. Maeve, you're needed in the conference room. Derek's waiting. Her eyes flickered to the computer screen. Unless you're too busy snooping? Just checking quarterly reports, I said, standing. Grace was helping me understand the new filing system. Linda's gaze settled on her granddaughter like a predator sizing up prey. How helpful of her. Grace, your grandmother needs a word. I caught Grace as I left, trying to convey reassurance I didn't feel. In my pocket, the USB drive felt like a live grenade, waiting to explode our carefully constructed lies. In the hallway, I texted Sam, "Need your lawyer friend's number." Now. The game had changed. Linda wasn't just trying to control Derek anymore, she was trying to erase me completely. Sam's office felt like neutral territory, a safe haven from the battlefield my life had become. She poured coffee while her lawyer friend, Marcus, reviewed the contents of Grace's USB drive. "This is more than just financial manipulation," Marcus said, turning his laptop screen toward me. "These emails between Linda and your accountant, they're discussing backdated documents, phantom expenses. It's fraud, Maeve." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "How much?" "Millions." He scrolled through spreadsheets. "They've been siphoning company profits through shell corporations for at least 2 years. Your signature's on some of these documents." "That's impossible." "I never." "They're forgeries," Sam interrupted, squeezing my hand. "Good ones, but forgeries." My phone buzzed. "Grace, grandmother's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Something about restructuring. Please hurry." Marcus leaned forward. "You have 2 choices. We can take this to the authorities now, or I can attend that meeting tomorrow and catch them in the act." The words tasted like revenge on my tongue. "It's risky," Sam warned. "Linda's ruthless, and Derek made his choice." I stood, gathering my coat. "I need to see something for myself first." An hour later, I stood in front of my childhood home, the place where I'd dreamed of building my own family. The for sale sign looked fresh, my mother's garden overgrown beneath it. After she died, I couldn't bear to sell it. The spare key was still hidden under the loose brick. Inside, dust sheets covered the furniture like shrouds. On the mantel, my wedding photo sat exactly where I'd left it years ago, Derek and me, young and hopeful, his mother standing between us. She'd been standing between us ever since. My phone rang, Derek's number. "Where are you?" His voice sounded strained. "Mother's worried." "Is she?" I traced the edge of our wedding photo. "Tell me something, Derek. When did you forge my signature on those transfer documents?" Silence stretched between us like a chasm. "Maeve, please come home. We can talk about this." "Home?" I laughed, the sound echoing in the empty house. "I'm standing in our real home, the one you promised we'd renovate together. Remember? Before your mother convinced you to buy that mansion instead? You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I set the wedding photo face down. "See you at tomorrow's board meeting, Derek." I think it's time everyone understood. After hanging up, I texted Grace, "Get me everything you can on those Florida properties." "And Grace? Be careful. Your grandmother's watching." In my childhood bedroom, I opened my old jewelry box. Inside lay the key to our company safe, the one Linda didn't know about. The one where I'd kept my own records, just in case. Tomorrow would change everything. I just had to survive until then. The boardroom felt like a tomb as I laid out copies of the evidence in front of each chair. Grace's Florida property documents. Bank statements. Forged signatures. 27 years of marriage reduced to a stack of betrayals. Paul Jenkins arrived first, his face grave. "Maeve, Linda's calling for a vote to remove you from the board." "I know." I straightened the papers at my place. "She's been planning this for months." "Derek signed the motion this morning." My hands stilled. Even expecting the betrayal didn't lessen its sting. Board members filtered in, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock as they reviewed the documents. Linda swept in last, Derek trailing behind her like a shadow. She froze when she saw the papers. What's the meaning of this? Her voice could have frozen hell. Funny, I was about to ask the same thing about these Florida properties. I projected the deeds onto the screen. Purchased with company funds, through shell corporations. In Derek's name. Derek's face drained of color. Mother, you said. Not now, dear. Linda's smile turned razor sharp. Maeve, you're clearly upset about the restructuring. Perhaps it's best if you... If I what? Disappear quietly? Like the millions you've embezzled? I turned to the board. Everything's documented. The fraud. The forgeries. The shell companies. You have no proof. Grace stood, hands shaking. Yes, she does. I gave it to her. Linda's mask cracked. You ungrateful. That's enough. Paul's voice cut through the chaos. These allegations are serious. We need to. What we need, Linda interrupted, is to vote. Now. She pulled out a document. I moved to remove Maeve Thompson from. Before we vote, I said quietly, you should know the SEC received copies of everything this morning. And Derek? I met his eyes for the first time. I filed for divorce an hour ago. The room erupted. Derek lunged forward. You can't. Can't what? Protect myself? The company? Or did you think I'd keep playing happy families while you and your mother destroyed everything we built? Linda's laugh cut like glass. Built? You were nothing before us. Tell her, Derek. Tell her about the real reason I had to step in. Derek's face contorted. Mother, please. Tell me what? I looked between them, seeing something darker in Linda's eyes. Should I tell her about the baby, Derek? The one you lost before you met her? The reason you'll always choose me? The room went silent. Derek's hands trembled as he reached for me. Maeve, I can explain. I stepped back, my world tilting on its axis. Choose, Derek. Right now. Your mother's lies or the truth. Because I'm done being the other woman in my own marriage. The boardroom door burst open. 2 FBI agents stepped in. Perfect timing, I said, gathering my papers. They'll want to speak with everyone. Especially you, Linda. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about surviving them. The FBI's questioning lasted hours. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I watched Linda weave her web of lies while Derek sat slumped beside her. Looking older than I'd ever seen him. Grace appeared at my elbow with coffee. They're reviewing the offshore accounts now. Good. My voice sounded hollow, even to me. Did you tell them about the safety deposit box? She nodded, then hesitated. Aunt Maeve, there's something else. Something grandmother said about Uncle Derek's past. Don't. The word came out sharper than intended. Whatever Linda's claiming about Derek's lost child. It wasn't just a child. Paul Jenkins stepped into the room, holding a weathered manila envelope. It was his wife. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering against the floor. First wife, Paul continued. Before you. She died in childbirth. Linda. She blamed Derek. Said if he'd listened to her about the pregnancy risks. The room spun. 27 years of marriage, and I'd never known. All those times Linda had weaponized my infertility while Derek sat silent, carrying this weight. Through the glass, I watched Derek finally push away from his mother's side. He walked toward me, but I backed away. Don't, I whispered. Just. Don't. Maeve, please. His voice cracked. I wanted to tell you so many times. When? Between letting your mother steal our money and planning your secret Florida escape? I never wanted Florida. Mother said. He stopped, realization dawning. She used it against me. All of it. Catherine's death, the baby, you. Linda's voice cut through the room like a blade. I protected you. After what happened with Catherine, you needed me. You'll always need me. The FBI agent cleared his throat. Mrs. Thompson, we're not finished. Oh, I think we are. Linda's smile turned vicious. Derek, darling, tell them about the real embezzlement. About how Maeve's been skimming profits for years. Show them that evidence we discussed. My blood froze. The fabricated documents I'd discovered in the safe, the ones I thought were meant to frame Grace. They'd been meant for me all along. Derek looked between us, the weight of 27 years hanging in the balance. Agent Crawford, he said quietly, I'd like to make a full confession. About everything. Starting with what my mother made me do to my first wife. Linda's scream of rage echoed through the building as they led her away. But it was Derek's silence that shattered what remained of my heart. I walked out of the office without looking back, leaving behind the shards of 2 marriages and 1 man's broken soul. Sometimes winning feels exactly like losing. Linda's bail hearing drew a crowd. I sat in the back row, watching her perform for the judge, the grieving mother, the misunderstood grandmother, the pillar of society wrongly accused. Her designer suit couldn't hide the steel beneath her smile. Derek testified first, his voice steady as he detailed decades of manipulation. The lost child. The dead wife. The carefully cultivated guilt that bound him to his mother's will. Then came my turn. Mrs. Thompson, Linda's lawyer began, isn't it true you orchestrated this entire situation to seize control of the company? No. I met Linda's eyes across the courtroom. I orchestrated it to free my husband. Linda's mask slipped. Liar! You never loved him. You just wanted order, the judge warned. But Linda was already on her feet. Tell them, Derek. Tell them how she trapped you after Catherine died. How she... Mother, stop. Derek's voice cut through her tirade. Catherine died because you convinced me she was too weak for motherhood. Just like you tried to convince me about Maeve. The courtroom fell silent. I did everything for you, Linda whispered. You did everything for yourself. Derek stood. And I let you, because facing the truth about Catherine was harder than believing your lies. Linda's composure shattered. She would have died anyway. The pregnancy was too risky. I saved you from watching another wife destroy herself trying to give you children. I saved you from Maeve doing the same. Saved him? I couldn't stop the laugh that escaped. You destroyed him. Every decision, every choice, you twisted it all to keep him dependent on you. But you made one mistake, Linda. And what's that? She sneered. You thought breaking him would break me. Instead, it showed me who he really was, a man worth saving from you. Your Honor, Linda's lawyer interrupted, my client. Your client just confessed to involvement in Catherine Thompson's death, the judge said quietly. Bailiff, take her into custody. As they led Linda away, she turned to Derek one last time. Everything I did was for love. No, Mother. Derek's voice was gentle. Everything you did was for control. And I'm done being controlled. He walked toward me, stopping just short of touching. I know it's too late for us. It was too late the moment you chose her lies over our truth. I know. He smiled sadly. But watching you fight for me, it helped me finally fight for myself. I stood, gathering my coat. Goodbye, Derek. Maeve? His voice stopped me at the door. I'm sorry, I wasn't strong enough to deserve your kind of love. I didn't look back. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about saving yourself from becoming them. The real estate sign came down from my childhood home as Grace helped me carry in the last box. My mother's garden needed work, but spring was coming. Time enough to bring things back to life. Uncle Derek signed the company over to me, Grace said, unpacking kitchen items. He's moving to Seattle. Starting fresh. I nodded, arranging my grandmother's teacups in the cabinet. The same ones Linda had dismissed as common all those years ago. You'll make a better CEO than any of us. Because I learned from your mistakes? Because you learned from our silence. The doorbell rang. Sam stood on the porch with Paul Jenkins, holding a bottle of wine. Housewarming, she said. Though technically, you're just coming home. We sat in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of redemption. Paul cleared his throat. The board approved your consulting firm's contract. 3 years, exclusive rights to restructure the company's management. Helping other women recognize financial abuse and manipulation, Sam added. It's perfect for you. It's necessary, I corrected, thinking of Linda in her prison cell, still believing love meant control. Of Derek, finally free but forever marked by her version of devotion. Grace's phone buzzed. Grandmother's appeal was denied. 20 years, minimum. The wine tasted sweeter somehow. Not victory, something quieter. Peace, maybe. I have something for you, Paul said, pulling out an envelope. Derek asked me to give you this before he left. Inside was a key and a deed. Our vacation cottage in Maine, the one place Linda had never visited, never tainted. Where Derek and I had once planned a future. He signed it over to your consulting firm, Paul explained. For women who need a safe place to rebuild. My throat tightened. In the end, Derek had found his courage. Too late for us, but maybe just in time for others. A young woman appeared at my garden gate, clutching a business card. I'm sorry to interrupt. The women's shelter gave me your number, said you could help. She twisted her wedding ring. My mother-in-law. I recognized the fear in her eyes, the shame in her shoulders. The desperate need to believe love shouldn't hurt this much. Come in, I said, standing. Let me put on some tea. Grace squeezed my hand as I passed. Sam and Paul exchanged knowing looks. They understood this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about recognition. About breaking the cycle of silence that lets manipulation masquerade as love. In my mother's garden, surrounded by witnesses to both my breakdown and my rebuilding, I finally understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting free and helping others find their way to freedom too. The young woman followed me inside, her steps uncertain but determined. Like mine had been, not so long ago. Like mine were now, but for entirely different reasons.
You're too sick to enjoy it anyway. My mother-in-law Patricia's voice dripped with contempt through the phone. I did everyone a favor by selling that old lake house. The money will help pay your medical bills since you insist on these expensive treatments. I lay in my hospital bed, still groggy from surgery, trying to process what I was hearing. The lake house, my grandfather's pride and joy, my childhood sanctuary, my inheritance, sold without my knowledge or consent while I was under anesthesia. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 34, I was battling a rare heart condition that required specialized surgery. The lake house was my safe haven, the place where I recovered between treatments, finding peace in the sound of gentle waves and morning mist over the water. My grandfather had left it to me in his will, knowing how much the place meant to me. You had no right, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. That property was mine. Patricia's laugh was sharp and dismissive. Oh, please, you can barely take care of yourself. Besides, Marcus agreed it was for the best. The buyers are already moving in. Marcus, my husband. Of course he'd sided with his mother. He always did. I ended the call, letting my phone drop onto the sterile hospital sheets. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't give Patricia the satisfaction, even if she couldn't see me. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Parker. A woman in a crisp business suit entered, holding a leather portfolio. I'm Amanda Torres from Lakeview Realty. I hope I'm not interrupting, but this couldn't wait. I gestured for her to come in, curious about her urgent expression. I'm here about the lake house sale, she began, taking a seat beside my bed. There seems to be a significant issue with the transaction. You mean besides the fact that I never agreed to sell it? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Amanda's professional demeanor shifted to one of concern. Wait, you're the owner, correct? According to county records, the property was inherited by Olivia Parker from Howard Matthews. Yes, that's me. My grandfather left it to me 5 years ago. She opened her portfolio, spreading out several documents. Mrs. Parker, the sale documents were signed by Patricia Wilson, claiming power of attorney. She presented paperwork, but something felt off. I did some digging. She paused, meeting my eyes. The power of attorney document appears to be forged. A strange calm settled over me. Of course Patricia had forged documents. She'd never let something as trivial as legality stand in her way. Can you prove it? Amanda nodded, pointing to various details on the papers. The notary stamp is inconsistent with registered notaries in our database. Plus, the documents dated last week, but the paper stock wasn't even manufactured until this month. It's a sloppy forgery. I thought about Patricia's smug voice on the phone, her certainty that she finally won. She'd been trying to control my life since I married Marcus 8 years ago, convinced I wasn't good enough for her precious son. The lake house had been a particular thorn in her side, prime real estate that she believed should belong to the real family. What happens now? I asked. The sale is void, Amanda explained. I've already contacted the buyers and frozen the transaction. But Mrs. Parker, she hesitated. This is serious fraud. Do you want to press charges? Did I? Patricia had finally overplayed her hand, given me irrefutable proof of her manipulation. But criminal charges would tear the family apart, force Marcus to choose sides. A memory surfaced, my grandfather sitting on the lake house porch, teaching me to fish. Sometimes, sweet pea, he'd said, the best revenge is letting people know you're stronger than they think you are. What would happen to the money? I asked Amanda. It's still in escrow, untouched. Patricia can't access it without final closing documents, which I haven't filed. Another knock at the door revealed my nurse. Mrs. Parker, your latest test came back. The surgery was successful. Your heart is responding exactly as we hoped. For the first time since waking up, I smiled. My heart was strong, stronger than Patricia had counted on. Miss Torres, I turned back to Amanda. Could you hold off on any legal action until I'm released? I think I'd like to handle this personally. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Of course. Here's my card. Call me when you're ready. And Mrs. Parker? For what it's worth, I'm glad I double-checked those documents. After she left, I lay back against my pillows, plans already forming. Patricia thought she'd finally beaten me, taken away my sanctuary while I was at my weakest. She had no idea that her perfect plan was about to unravel. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Mom says you're being difficult about the lake house. Why can't you think about what's best for everyone? I didn't reply. Let them think they'd won for now. Let Patricia celebrate her victory, perhaps even plan how to spend the money. My grandfather had always said the lake was at its most beautiful just before dawn, when the mist rolled in and everything changed. I closed my eyes, remembering the smell of pine needles, the creak of old wooden floors, the way sunlight danced on water. Patricia thought she'd taken all that away from me, but she'd actually given me something precious. The perfect opportunity to show her exactly who she was dealing with. The nurse returned with my evening medication. Your heart rate's looking much better, she said, checking the monitors. Whatever you're thinking about must be good for you. I smiled, fingering Amanda's business card, just planning a little family reunion at the lake house. It's going to be unforgettable. 3 days after my surgery, I was discharged from a hospital. My recovery was progressing remarkably well, something Patricia attributed to the stress of that old lake house being lifted from your shoulders. She'd been calling daily, her voice dripping with fake concern, while subtly reminding me how incapable I was of managing property. I let her talk, let her believe her plan had succeeded. Meanwhile, I was building my case meticulously. Amanda Torres had provided me with copies of every forged document, every fraudulent signature. The paper trail was damning. "I just don't understand why you're being so cold," Marcus said one evening as he brought me tea. He'd been sleeping in the guest room since my return, claiming he didn't want to disturb my recovery. Mom was trying to help. I sipped my tea slowly, studying my husband's face. The boy I'd fallen in love with was still there somewhere, buried under years of his mother's manipulation. Help who, Marcus? Her stuff to my inheritance? He shifted uncomfortably. The medical bills are covered by my insurance, I cut in. The same insurance I've maintained through my job, despite your mother's constant suggestions that I should quit and focus on being a proper wife. Liv, you know how she is. She just wants what's best for her. For who, Marcus? For me? Or for herself? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. It was Amanda. "Mrs. Parker, the buyers are getting anxious. They're threatening to involve their lawyers if we don't explain the delay." "Actually, that's perfect timing," I said, watching Marcus's confused expression. "Could you set up a meeting? I think it's time everyone understood exactly what's happening." 2 days later, I walked into the real estate office, my medical clearance letter tucked safely in my bag along with other crucial documents. Patricia was already there, standing imperiously by Amanda's desk while Marcus hovered nearby. The buyers, a young couple named James and Sarah Miller, sat nervously in the corner. "Finally," Patricia huffed. "Now we can sort out this ridiculous delay and complete the sale." I smiled serenely, taking a seat. "Yes, let's sort this out. Amanda, would you mind explaining to everyone why the sale was halted?" Amanda cleared her throat professionally. "Certainly. During our standard verification process, we discovered irregularities in the power of attorney documentation presented by Mrs. Wilson. Specifically, evidence of forgery." The room went silent. Patricia's face flushed dark red. "How dare you? I would never." "The notary stamp is fake," I continued calmly. "The paper stock is wrong, and the signature. I pulled out my grandfather's will. Doesn't match any of my legal documents. Would you like to explain that, Patricia?" Marcus stepped forward. "Mom? What is she talking about?" Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "She's lying. I had every right. You were in surgery, decisions had to be made." "Actually," Amanda interjected, "Mrs. Parker's medical directive names her sister as her emergency decision maker, not you, Mrs. Wilson. You had no legal authority whatsoever." I turned to the Millers, who were watching the scene unfold with growing concern. "I'm so sorry you've been caught up in this. I know you were excited about the property." Sarah Miller nodded uncertainly. It's such a beautiful place." "When we saw it." "I know," I said softly. "I grew up there. My grandfather taught me to swim in that lake, to fish off that dock. Every board in that house has a memory." "This is ridiculous," Patricia burst out. "You can't even take care of yourself, let alone a property." "Marcus, tell her." But Marcus was staring at the forged documents on Amanda's desk, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Mom, this is your handwriting." Patricia faltered for the first time. "I was trying to protect you. She's been holding you back, keeping that prime property all to herself when we could have." "When you could have what?" I interrupted. "Sold it, profited from my inheritance, created some investment opportunity for Marcus that would keep him dependent on you." "I did it for him," Patricia shouted. "Everything I do is for my son." "No," Marcus said quietly. "You did it for yourself. You always do." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia looked from Marcus to me, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady. "The sale is void. It was never legal to begin with. The Millers will get their earnest money back, with my sincere apologies for the confusion." And then, Patricia sneered, trying to regain control. "Then you have a choice," I replied. "You can either face charges for fraud and forgery, or you can sign this." I pulled out a document my lawyer had prepared. It's a formal acknowledgement of your actions and a legally binding agreement to never interfere with my property or medical decisions again. You wouldn't dare press charges, she scoffed. You never do that to Marcus. I met my husband's eyes. For the first time in years, he was really seeing me and his mother. Actually, he said, I think she would, and she should. Patricia's face crumpled. Marcus, sign the papers, Mom, or I'll drive her to the police station myself. With trembling hands and wounded dignity, Patricia signed the agreement. Amanda notarized it, properly this time, and made copies for everyone. As we left the office, Marcus touched my arm gently. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have seen it sooner. I looked at him, seeing glimmers of the man I'd married emerging from his mother's shadow. Yes, you should have. We have a lot to talk about. Behind us, I heard Patricia's heels clicking rapidly on the pavement as she hurried away, her perfect plan in shambles. The lake house was safe, but more importantly, the truth was finally out. That evening, sitting on our back porch, Marcus asked quietly, Will you take me to the lake house? Help me understand what it means to you. I smiled, thinking of dawn mist and gentle waves. Yes, I said. I think it's time you saw it through my eyes instead of your mother's. Recovery, I was learning, came in many forms. Sometimes it was a healing heart, sometimes a healing marriage, and sometimes it was simply standing your ground when others tried to take what was yours. 6 months after the confrontation at the real estate office, I stood on the lake house dock watching the sunrise paint the water gold. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and possibilities. Behind me, I heard the screen door creak and Marcus's footsteps on the wooden planks. Coffee, he offered, holding out a steaming mug. Thanks, I said, accepting both the coffee and his presence beside me. These quiet morning moments had become our new ritual during weekend visits to the lake house. We were rebuilding, slowly but surely, finding our way back to each other without Patricia's shadow looming over us. The changes in our lives had been significant. Marcus had started therapy, working through years of his mother's manipulation. Patricia, faced with the evidence of her actions and the threat of legal consequences, had moved to Florida to live with her sister. She still sent occasional emails, but they were subdued, lacking the controlling edge that had once characterized every interaction. I got a call from the Millers yesterday, Marcus said, sipping his coffee. They found another property on the other side of the lake. They're happy there. I nodded, thinking of the young couple who'd unwittingly been caught in Patricia's scheme. I'm glad. They seemed like good people. They are. James asked if we'd like to join them for a barbecue next weekend. Said something about building a better lake community. The idea made me smile. My grandfather had always talked about the importance of good neighbors, how the lake brings people together in ways city living never could. He would have liked the Millers. We'd spent the past few months restoring the lake house, not just physically but emotionally. Each room held memories. The kitchen where my grandfather taught me to cook his famous fish fry, the living room where I'd recuperated after my first heart surgery as a teenager, the sun porch where I'd spent countless hours reading and dreaming. Marcus had thrown himself into the restoration work, learning the history of every repair, every upgrade my grandfather had made. It was his way of making amends, of showing me he understood what he'd almost lost. I found something in the attic yesterday, he said, pulling an old photograph from his pocket. It showed my grandfather and me on this very dock, both of us grinning as I held up my first caught fish. You look so happy here. I said softly. I am. This place, it's more than just property, Marcus. It's every summer spent learning from my grandfather, every storm washed from the porch, every peaceful morning like this one. Your mother never understood that. She never tried to, he admitted. She only saw the monetary value, the status. I'm sorry I let her view cloud mine for so long. My heart condition had stabilized remarkably since the surgery. The doctors said stress reduction played a big part in my recovery, and I knew removing Patricia's toxic influence had been as healing as any medical procedure. I've been thinking, Marcus said, turning to face me. What if we started some new traditions here? Make this place mean something to us, not just about the past. I raised an eyebrow, curious. What did you have in mind? Well, he smiled. Remember how you always talked about running art workshops? The sunroom would make a perfect studio. And that patch of land by the old boathouse. We could start a garden there, something your grandfather would have loved. The idea warmed me more than the coffee. My grandfather had always said the lake house should be a living thing, growing and changing while keeping its heart intact. I'd like that, I said. But only if you're sure. This is my sanctuary, Marcus. I won't have it turned into another battlefield. He took my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I'm sure. I want to build something here with you, something that's ours. No more letting my mother's voice dictate our choices. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an email notification from Patricia. I glanced at it briefly, another thinly veiled attempt to assert control, suggesting we sell that old place and invest in Florida property near her. Delete. You know what I learned from all this? I said, turning back to the sunrise. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply hold your ground. Not with anger or revenge, but with quiet certainty in what you know is right. Marcus squeezed my hand. You've always been the strong one. I just didn't see it before. A fish jumped in the distance, creating ripples that spread across the golden water. Like those ripples, the effects of standing our ground had spread through every aspect of our lives. Our marriage was stronger, clearer. My health was better than it had been in years. And the lake house, my grandfather's legacy, remained a sanctuary, not just of the past now, but of our future too. Come on, I said, tugging Marcus toward the house. Let's make breakfast. I think it's time I taught you my grandfather's secret pancake recipe. As we walked back along the dock, I sent a silent thank you to my grandfather. He left me more than just a house by the lake. He'd given me a place to find my strength, to heal, to grow. And now finally, it was helping heal my marriage too. The morning mist was lifting, revealing a clear, bright day ahead. Just the kind of day for new beginnings. The sound of heavy machinery ripped through the peaceful morning air as I watched my mother-in-law, Diana, direct the bulldozer straight through the heart of my butterfly sanctuary. 15 years of careful cultivation, endangered species conservation, and delicate ecosystem management reduced to dirt in minutes. Perfect. Diana clapped her hands with glee, her perfectly manicured nails glinting in the sunlight. Sarah, darling, this space will make the most amazing party venue for Jessica. Those worthless flowers were just taking up prime real estate. My name is Emma Anderson, and at 35, I'd spent over half my life creating one of the most successful butterfly conservation programs in the state. What Diana saw as worthless flowers was actually a carefully crafted habitat that had helped bring 3 endangered species back from the brink of extinction. Diana, I kept my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. This is a protected sanctuary. You can't just destroy it. She waved her hand dismissively, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Oh please, I checked. The protection paperwork expired last month. And since this is technically our family property, I can do whatever I want with it. She smiled, that same cold smile she'd given me at my wedding to her son Michael 7 years ago. Jessica needs somewhere suitable for her social events. She's becoming quite the influencer, you know. Jessica, my sister-in-law, stood off to the side, filming the destruction for her social media. This is going to be so perfect for my summer soiree series. She squealed, adjusting her designer sunglasses. Nobody wants to see boring butterflies anyway. I thought about the rare chrysalises hidden throughout the garden, the careful documentation of migration patterns, the delicate balance of plants and insects I'd maintained for years. Diana had timed this perfectly. Michael was away on a business trip, and she knew the sanctuary's official protected status had temporarily lapsed while the renewal paperwork was being processed. What she didn't know was that I'd been preparing for something like this ever since she'd started making comments about the waste of space 3 months ago. You really should thank me, Diana continued, watching as the bulldozer crushed my award-winning moonflower patch. This place was bringing down the neighborhood's property values. Jessica's parties will put us on the map. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Diana's smile faltered slightly. What are you doing? Documenting. I replied calmly. Please continue explaining why you're destroying a sanctuary that houses endangered species. Turn that off. Jessica shrieked, lowering her own phone. You can't film me without permission. I'm an influencer. But I kept recording as Diana strutted around the destruction, detailing her grand plans for Jessica's venue. The pergolas draped in designer fabrics, the imported marble fountains, the sophisticated lighting system. Each detail she mentioned was another nail in her own coffin. What Diana and Jessica didn't understand was that butterflies aren't just beautiful, they're survivors. And so was I. The landscapers will be here tomorrow to clear out any remaining weeds, Diana announced, brushing non-existent dirt from her silk blouse. Jessica's first event is in 2 weeks. I expect you to be supportive, Emma. After all, we're family. Family. The word felt bitter in my mouth. I thought about the hidden cameras I'd installed throughout the sanctuary last month, the careful documentation I'd been keeping, and the emergency conservation plan I put into place with the help of Dr. Martinez from the State Wildlife Protection Agency. Of course, I said, smiling for the first time that day. Family is everything, isn't it? Diana's eyes narrowed slightly at my tone, but she quickly recovered. Exactly. I knew you'd understand. Come along, Jessica. We need to meet with the event planner. As they click-clacked away in their expensive heels, I looked at the devastation around me. To an untrained eye, it looked like complete destruction. But I knew better. Underground, hidden in specially designed protected chambers, thousands of chrysalises were waiting to emerge. In the surrounding trees, carefully camouflaged sanctuary boxes housed countless others. I pulled out my phone again, this time to make a call. Dr. Martinez, it's happened. Yes, exactly as we predicted. Can you come now and bring the documentation team? That evening, as the sun set over the destroyed garden, I sat on my back porch and opened my laptop. The sanctuary's social media accounts had over 500,000 followers, all dedicated to butterfly conservation and environmental protection. I began uploading the day's footage, Diana's destruction, her boasting, Jessica's callous comments. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Flight delayed. Be home tomorrow. Everything okay? I looked at the demolished sanctuary, remembering how Michael and I had met there 7 years ago, when he visited to write an article about butterfly conservation. He'd understood then what his mother and sister never could. That true beauty isn't about social media followers or expensive parties. It's about protecting something precious, something irreplaceable. Everything's going exactly as planned, I texted back. Tomorrow, Diana and Jessica would learn a powerful lesson about nature, because what they destroyed wasn't just a garden. It was one of the largest collections of endangered butterfly species in the country, and tomorrow was the scheduled emergence day for over 3,000 chrysalises. I smiled as I watched the sunset, imagining Diana's face when she arrived with her landscapers. Sometimes the most beautiful revenge doesn't require any action at all. Sometimes you just need to let nature take its course. My phone buzzed again, this time with an alert from the hidden cameras. In the darkness, the first chrysalis was beginning to open. The next morning dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for what was about to unfold. I arrived at the sanctuary early, camera in hand, just as Diana's expensive SUV pulled up with her team of landscapers. Now remember, I heard her instructing them. I want everything cleared out. Every last weed, every stick, every... Her voice died in her throat as she looked up. The sight was breathtaking. Thousands of butterflies, their wings glistening in the morning sun, filled the air. Rare blue morphos, endangered monarchs, and the critically threatened Silva's metalmark, species that collectors would pay fortunes to acquire, danced through the air in a stunning display of color and movement. What is this? Diana stammered, her perfectly applied makeup unable to hide her growing panic. Nature, I replied simply, continuing to film. More specifically, about 3,000 endangered butterflies emerging from their chrysalises. Perfect timing, wouldn't you say? Jessica tumbled out of the passenger seat, her designer outfit clashing with the early morning hour. She immediately raised her phone, but for once, she seemed speechless. This is impossible, Diana hissed. You planned this. The landscapers were already backing away, one of them muttering about not getting involved in environmental violations. Diana's face flushed red. This is private property, she snapped. I have every right to destroy federally protected species. Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow. The paperwork for renewed protection was filed months ago. The only reason it appeared to lapse was because we were upgrading the sanctuary's status to a federal conservation site. I watched as the color drained from Diana's face. Behind her, Jessica was frantically deleting yesterday's social media posts. But, Diana's perfectly manicured hands trembled. This is family property, my son. Actually, I interrupted quietly, Michael and I transferred ownership of this property to the Conservation Trust last month. He agreed it was the best way to protect the sanctuary's future. The look of betrayal on Diana's face would have been comical if it weren't so sad. Michael would never. As if on cue, another car pulled up. Michael stepped out, his business suit slightly rumpled from travel, but his face set with determination. "Mother," he said firmly, walking to stand beside me. "What have you done?" "Michael." Diana's voice shifted to the sweet tone she always used with her son. "Darling, I was just trying to help Jessica with her career. You know how important her social media presence is." Michael looked at the destroyed garden, then at the clouds of butterflies still emerging. By destroying endangered species, by bulldozing Emma's life's work, the sanctuary that brought us together. "But she's not family," Diana protested. "Not really. Jessica is your sister, your blood." "Emma is my wife." Michael's voice was quiet but firm. "And this sanctuary is her passion, one that I share. Did you really think I didn't know about your plans? That Emma and I hadn't prepared for this?" Jessica finally found her voice. "You knew? You let Mom walk into this trap." "It wasn't a trap," I said softly. "It was protection. For the butterflies, for the sanctuary, and yes, for myself. Every threat Diana made, every time she talked about better uses for this land, we documented it all." Dr. Martinez stepped forward again. "Mrs. Watson, we'll need you to come with us to discuss the environmental violations. The deliberate destruction of endangered species habitat carries significant penalties." Diana's perfectly composed facade finally cracked. But what about Jessica's parties? Her influencer career? "I suggest," Michael said, "that Jessica finds a venue that doesn't involve destroying protected species." As the wildlife protection team led Diana away for questioning, Jessica trailed behind them, still frantically working on her phone. I heard her muttering about damage control and losing followers. Michael turned to me, pulling me into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry I couldn't be here yesterday, but you handled it perfectly." I leaned into his embrace, watching as more butterflies continued to emerge. "We did what we had to do. Your mother never understood that some things are worth more than social status." Speaking of worth, Dr. Martinez interrupted gently with the sanctuary's new federal status. "You'll be eligible for additional funding. The emerging butterflies have already attracted national attention." She was right. News vans were starting to arrive, drawn by the spectacular sight of thousands of rare butterflies filling the morning sky. The destruction Diana had wreaked had inadvertently created the perfect staging ground for their emergence, making the spectacle even more dramatic. "Maybe some good will come from this after all," I mused, watching as a particularly beautiful blue morpho landed on what remained of my moonflower patch. Already, I could see tiny shoots of green pushing through the disturbed soil. Michael squeezed my hand. "Nature finds a way." As the morning progressed, visitors began to arrive, drawn by the incredible sight. Where Diana had envisioned expensive parties, something far more valuable was taking place. People connecting with nature, learning about conservation, understanding the importance of protecting these delicate species. I smiled, remembering Diana's words from yesterday. Nobody wants to see boring butterflies anyway. The growing crowd of amazed onlookers proved just how wrong she'd been. Sometimes the most beautiful revenge isn't destruction at all. It's creation, protection, and letting nature show its own power. The sanctuary would rebuild stronger than before. And maybe, just maybe, Diana would learn something from all this. Though judging by the legal papers Dr. Martinez was preparing, her first lessons would be about environmental law. Part 3. 6 months later, the butterfly sanctuary had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The destruction Diana caused had actually created new opportunities for growth. Where her bulldozers had torn through my carefully planned gardens, we built enhanced breeding habitats. The cleared space allowed us to implement improved protection systems and create educational areas for visitors. And here, I explained to a group of wide-eyed schoolchildren, is where our newest species made its home. I gestured to a flowering section where brilliant violet wings fluttered among the blooms. They chose this spot all on their own. "Just like magic," one little girl exclaimed, her face full of wonder. It wasn't magic, but it was pretty close. The sanctuary had not only recovered but thrived. Our visitor numbers had quadrupled, and 3 more endangered species had successfully bred in our protected environment. The federal funding Dr. Martinez helped secure had turned this space into a leading conservation center. Diana, meanwhile, had faced her own transformations. The environmental violations came with hefty fines and mandatory community service hours. In an ironic twist that even I couldn't have planned, the judge assigned her to work in butterfly garden rehabilitation programs. "Mrs. Watson," I heard one of the conservation officers call out, "those milkweed plants need to be spaced further apart." I turned to see Diana, dressed in decidedly undesigner gardening clothes, carefully repositioning plants under supervision. The past months had changed her appearance. Her perfectly manicured nails were now often dirt-stained, and her expensive highlights had grown out. She caught my eye briefly before looking away. We hadn't spoken directly since that morning 6 months ago, but I'd seen subtle changes in her behavior. Last week, I'd overheard her explaining to another community service worker why certain plants were essential for butterfly breeding. She'd actually gotten it right. Jessica had undergone her own transformation. After her followers criticized her role in destroying endangered species, she'd surprisingly pivoted her social media presence. Her latest posts focused on environmental awareness, though I suspected this was more about image rehabilitation than genuine change. Still, any positive influence was welcome. "Emma?" Michael's voice pulled me from my thoughts. He joined me as the school group moved to the next station. "The Conservation Board just called. They've approved our expansion proposal." I smiled, squeezing his hand. The expansion would allow us to protect an additional 20 acres of land, creating one of the largest butterfly conservation areas in the country. Perfect timing. The new species are going to need more space. Speaking of space, he hesitated, glancing toward his mother. Mom asked if she could continue volunteering here after her community service ends. I raised my eyebrows, surprised. Diana had never shown any interest in actual conservation work before her mandatory service. "Really?" She said working with the butterflies has been therapeutic. Michael shrugged. "I think she finally understands what you've been trying to create here." As if to emphasize his point, a massive blue morpho butterfly landed on Diana's shoulder as she worked, instead of shrieking or shooing it away as she once would have. She carefully paused her work until it chose to fly off. "Well," I said thoughtfully, "we could always use experienced volunteers who understand the importance of protection and conservation." The sanctuary had taught me many lessons over the years, but perhaps the most important was that transformation, like the metamorphosis of a butterfly, takes time and the right conditions. Diana's attempt to destroy this place had instead forced her to understand its value. Later that afternoon, as the sun began to set, I found Diana still working in the garden. She looked up as I approached, her face uncertain. "The black swallowtail seemed to prefer this section," she said quietly, gesturing to the plants she'd been tending. "I've been keeping track of their patterns." I nodded, noting how healthy the plants looked under her care. "They're very particular about their habitat. You've done good work here." She was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "I never understood before. I thought it was just flowers and bugs. But it's so much more than that. It's about protection," I replied. "About creating safe spaces for vulnerable things to grow and transform." Diana met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw genuine understanding there. "Yes," she said simply. "I see that now." As we stood there in the growing dusk, butterflies dancing around us in the golden light, I realized that the sanctuary had worked its magic once again. It had transformed not just the land, but the people who touched it, even those who had once sought to destroy it. Sometimes the most beautiful revenge isn't about getting even or proving points. Sometimes it's about creating something so undeniably valuable that it changes hearts and minds all on its own. The butterflies had known this all along. They just needed us humans to catch up. "Same time tomorrow?" I asked Diana as she gathered her gardening tools. She nodded, a small but genuine smile crossing her face. "The monarchs will be emerging, and they would be beautiful." Thanks for the college fund, bestie. Living my best life in Bali. The text from my sister-in-law, Amanda, popped up on my screen, accompanied by a photo of her lounging on a beach chair, designer sunglasses perched on her nose. $500,000 buys a lot of mojitos. My hands didn't shake as I read the message. Instead, I felt an odd sense of calm wash over me. I saved the screenshot, adding it to my growing collection of evidence. Don't worry about the kids' future, another text buzzed through. They can always work at McDonald's like their boring mom. I'm Julia Matthews, 35, and I've spent the last decade working as a risk assessment manager at one of Boston's top banks. Not exactly McDonald's material, but Amanda never bothered to learn what I actually did for a living. To her, I was just the plain sister-in-law who married her brother Michael, the unglamorous one who chose stability over sparkle. Guess your secret hiding spot wasn't so secret after all. Amanda's texts kept coming. Thanks for funding my world tour. I glanced at the family photo on my desk. My twins, Emma and Ethan, both 10, grinning at the camera during our last vacation. The college fund she'd supposedly emptied was meant for them, carefully built over years of smart investments and savings. What Amanda didn't know was that I'd learned long ago to prepare for the worst, especially when it came to family. 3 months earlier, I'd noticed something off about Amanda's behavior. She'd started showing up at our house unannounced, asking suspicious questions about our finances, lingering around my home office when she thought I wasn't paying attention. One evening, I caught her photographing documents in my desk drawer with her phone. That's when I called Marcus Chen, my investment manager. Julia, he'd said, his voice serious, your sister-in-law has been making inquiries about your children's college fund. She claims to have power of attorney. I wasn't surprised. Amanda had always been envious of our stability, of the life Michael and I had built. She burned through relationships and jobs, always blaming others for her failures. Lately, she'd been fixated on our supposed privilege, conveniently forgetting the years of hard work we put in. Let's set up a trap account, I suggested to Marcus. Make it look like the real thing, but with some special modifications. The plan was simple but effective. We created a dummy account with the same balance as the real college fund, but with specific tracking measures in place. Every transaction would be flagged, every withdrawal documented. The real money was safely tucked away in a different account, one that Amanda knew nothing about. Now, as I watched her vacation photos roll in first-class flights, luxury resorts, shopping sprees at high-end boutiques, I felt a mixture of pity and anticipation. She thought she was living her best life on my children's future. In reality, she was building an airtight case against herself. My phone rang. It was Michael, my husband. Jules, have you seen Amanda's social media? His voice was tight with concern. She's posting about some kind of world tour. Please tell me she didn't. Check your email, I said calmly. I just sent you something you need to see. I had prepared a detailed document showing everything. The security footage of Amanda breaking into our home office, the bank's records of her attempted fraud, the transfer she'd made to her personal account. Most importantly, proof that the real college fund was safe and untouched. I don't understand, Michael said after a long pause. How did you know? Remember last Christmas? I asked. When Amanda gave that drunk speech about how we didn't deserve our success. How some people just needed to take what was rightfully theirs. I've been in risk assessment for 12 years, Michael. I know the signs. There was silence on the other end of the line. Michael had always tried to see the best in his sister, making excuses for her behavior, hoping she'd eventually grow up. But this time, there was no excuse to be made. What happens now? He finally asked. Before I could answer, another call beeped through. Marcus Chen. Julia, he said, his tone professional but with a hint of satisfaction. The trap has been sprung. Every transaction your sister-in-law made has been logged and reported. The authorities have been notified and her accounts have been frozen. Would you like us to proceed with pressing charges? I thought about all the times Amanda had mocked my career, my choices, my dedication to providing for my children's future. I thought about her smug texts, her casual cruelty, her complete disregard for her own niece and nephew's education. Yes, I replied firmly, proceed with everything. As if on cue, another text from Amanda popped up. Just booked a private villa in Maldives. Who needs college when you have an aunt like me? I smiled, knowing that her next accommodation would be far less luxurious. Marcus would be triggering the fraud alerts soon, and Amanda's tropical paradise would come crashing down around her designer sunglasses. Should we tell her? Michael asked, still on the other line. No need, I replied. The investment manager's call tomorrow morning will explain everything. For now, let her enjoy her last few hours of fantasy. I looked at the family photo again. At my children's bright, hopeful faces. Amanda had underestimated me, seeing only what she wanted to see. A boring sister-in-law who wouldn't know how to protect what was hers. She forgot that sometimes the quiet ones are the most prepared. My phone buzzed one final time. Thanks again for the college fund. Best thing you've ever done for me. I saved the screenshot, adding it to the evidence file. Tomorrow would bring a very different kind of celebration. But for now, I had some calls to make. After all, international fraud charges require quite a bit of paperwork. The call came at exactly 8:47 a.m. ballet time. I know because Amanda's Instagram story, posted just minutes before, showed her ordering a $200 champagne breakfast by her private pool. Living the trust fund life. She'd captioned it. Marcus's voice was crisp and professional as he delivered the news that would end her luxury getaway. Mrs. Matthews, I've just spoken with your sister-in-law. The authorities have frozen all accounts associated with the fraudulent transfers. Would you like me to patch you into the conference call? I muted my end and listened as Amanda's world imploded in real time. What do you mean frozen? Amanda's voice cracked with panic. There must be some mistake. That money was given to me. Ms. Walker, Marcus replied, we have documented evidence of unauthorized access and fraudulent transfers totaling $489,742.53. The funds you accessed were part of a monitored security account. Every transaction has been logged and reported to the Financial Crimes Unit. The silence that followed was deafening. But Julia never said anything. Amanda's voice rose hysterically. She just let me take it. She knew I was spending it. That's correct, Marcus stated. Mrs. Matthews allowed the transactions to proceed as part of the bank's fraud detection protocol. The real college fund remained secure and untouched. I could almost see Amanda's perfectly made-up face crumbling as reality set in. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the call. Probably that champagne breakfast meeting an untimely end. This is impossible, she whispered. Julia doesn't know anything about banking. She's just a risk assessment manager at one of Boston's top financial institutions. Marcus finished for her. Mrs. Matthews has been documenting your attempts to access these accounts for months. Would you like me to review the evidence? What followed was a detailed list of every break-in attempt, every forged document, every unauthorized access, complete with dates, times, and security footage. Amanda had been so confident in her superiority that she hadn't even tried to hide her tracks. The local authorities have been notified, Marcus continued. Given your current location, this falls under international banking fraud. I suggest you contact legal representation immediately. The call ended with Amanda in tears, her dream vacation transformed into a nightmare. Within hours, her social media went dark, but not before I'd archived every post, every boast about spending my children's money. Michael arrived home that evening looking exhausted. He'd spent the day dealing with frantic calls from their parents, trying to explain how their daughter had managed to commit international fraud. Mom and Dad want to know if we'll drop the charges, he said, sinking into the couch. They're worried about Amanda's future. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been completing the final fraud report. Funny how they're concerned about her future now, but not when she was stealing our children's education fund. They said we should have warned her. Michael continued, running his hands through his hair. That we set her up. No, I replied firmly. Amanda set herself up. All I did was protect our children from someone who spent years thinking she was entitled to whatever she wanted. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. You've ruined my life. I trusted you. How could you do this to family? I showed Michael the message. She trusted me? To what? Stand by while she stole from our kids. Before he could respond, another text arrived. Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this. You've torn this family apart. Michael read the message, his face hardening. No, Amanda torn this family apart when she decided to steal from her own niece and nephew. I smiled, reaching for his hand. This was why I've fallen in love with him. Beneath his desire to see the best in people, there was a solid core of integrity. The bank's fraud department is handling everything, I explained. Amanda will have two choices: face criminal charges or agree to full restitution with strict conditions. She doesn't have that kind of money, Michael said quietly. No, but she has that luxury condo our parents bought her last year, and that car she's always bragging about. Sometimes growing up means facing consequences. As if on cue, my phone rang. Marcus again. Mrs. Matthews, we've received a call from your sister-in-law's lawyer. They're requesting a meeting to discuss restitution options. I put the call on speaker so Michael could hear. Already? I asked. That was fast. Apparently, Ms. Walker attempted to check out of her hotel and was informed her credit cards had been declined. The hotel is holding her passport until the bill is settled. Michael's eyes widened. I squeezed his hand, knowing this was difficult for him. The lawyer mentioned something about liquidating assets. Marcus continued. Would you like me to set up the meeting for tomorrow? I looked at Michael, who nodded slowly. Yes, I replied. Tomorrow would be perfect. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and showed Michael something I'd been working on. A structured repayment plan that would allow Amanda to avoid criminal charges while making full restitution. It's strict, I explained. Monthly payments, financial counseling, no access to credit or loans until everything is repaid. But it's better than prison. You thought of everything, Michael said, a hint of amazement in his voice. That's my job, I reminded him. Assessing risks, protecting assets, and always having a backup plan. Just then, Emma and Ethan burst into the room, back from their after-school activities. Mom, Emma exclaimed, is it true what Grandma said? Did Aunt Amanda try to steal our college money? I patted the couch, inviting them to sit. Yes, but don't worry. The money is safe. Sometimes people make bad choices and then they have to deal with the consequences. Like when I tried to copy Josh's math test and got detention. Ethan asked. Exactly like that, Michael answered, but on a much bigger scale. As I looked at my family, Michael still processing his sister's betrayal, the twins trying to understand adult problems through children's eyes. I felt certain we'd made the right choice. Sometimes protecting your family means making tough decisions, even when others might not understand. My phone buzzed one final time that evening. A message from Marcus, meeting set for 9 a.m. Ms. Walker's lawyer has agreed to all preliminary conditions. She's on the first flight back from Bali. I closed my laptop and joined my family on the couch. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, we were safe, secure, and most importantly, together. Who wants to help make dinner? I asked, standing up. Can we have breakfast for dinner? The twins asked in unison. Sure, I laughed, but maybe hold the champagne. The conference room at my bank felt smaller than usual as Amanda sat across from me, her designer clothes wrinkled from the long flight, dark circles under her eyes despite her makeup. Her lawyer, a sharp-suited woman named Patricia, sat beside her reviewing the restitution agreement. Gone was the smug sister-in-law who taunted me with vacation photos. In her place sat someone who finally understood the magnitude of her actions. The terms are non-negotiable, Marcus stated, sliding the document across the table. Full restitution of $489,742.53, plus legal fees and hotel charges from Bali. The condo and car will need to be sold immediately as down payment. Amanda's hands trembled as she reached for the papers. This is everything I have, she whispered. Actually, I spoke for the first time. It's everything you took. There's a difference. Her eyes met mine, and I saw a flash of the old Amanda, ready to argue, to blame, to justify. But Patricia placed a warning hand on her arm. My client accepts the terms, Patricia said firmly. We understand this is extremely generous considering the alternative. Marcus nodded. Mrs. Matthews has agreed not to press criminal charges, provided all conditions are met. This includes mandatory financial counseling, monthly check-ins, and full transparency about all financial accounts for the duration of the repayment period. As Amanda signed each page, I thought about the email I'd received from our parents that morning. They called me heartless, accused me of trapping their daughter, of destroying her life. They hadn't mentioned their grandchildren once, or the future Amanda had tried to steal. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out an additional document. This is a formal agreement that you will have no contact with my children until the restitution is complete and you've undergone counseling. Amanda's head snapped up. You can't keep me from my niece and nephew. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. You tried to steal their future. Actions have consequences, Amanda. This is one of them. 2 hours later, I walked out of the bank, the signed agreements safely filed away. Amanda had left in tears, finally facing a problem she couldn't charm or manipulate her way out of. Michael was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car. "How did it go?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. "She signed everything. The condo goes on the market next week, and her lawyer is handling the car sale. It's done." He held me tighter. "Mom called again, said we're being cruel." I pulled back to look at him. "Are we? Really? Because I think we're being incredibly merciful. She committed international fraud, Michael. She could be in prison." "I know," he sighed. "It's just, she's still my sister. And Emma and Ethan are your children." I reminded him gently. Sometimes being a parent means making hard choices to protect your kids. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. Amanda's condo and car had sold, covering almost half of what she'd taken. She'd moved into a small apartment and found a job. Her first real one in years. The mandatory counseling was revealing deep-seated issues with entitlement and jealousy that she was finally being forced to address. Our parents were still struggling to accept the new family dynamic, but they'd stopped trying to make us feel guilty about protecting our children's future. One evening, as Michael and I helped the twins with their homework, Emma looked up from her math book. "Mom," she said thoughtfully, "is Aunt Amanda ever coming back?" I exchanged a glance with Michael before answering. "Maybe someday, honey, when she's better and has shown she can be trusted again." "Good," Ethan chimed in. "Because I want to tell her about my college plans. I'm going to be a forensic accountant, like those people who catch bad guys who steal money." Michael tried to hide his smile while I fought back tears. Our children were learning valuable lessons about responsibility, consequences, and the importance of protecting what matters. Lessons Amanda was learning too, albeit the hard way. Later that night, I received an unexpected email from Amanda. "Julia, the counselor says I should take responsibility for my actions, so here goes, I'm sorry. Not just for taking the money, but for everything. For mocking your job, your choices, your life. You weren't boring, you were smart. You weren't plain. You were prepared. I didn't see it then, but I do now. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know I'm working hard to make it right. Amanda." I showed the email to Michael, who read it with tears in his eyes. "Think she means it?" he asked. "Time will tell," I replied, "but it's a start." I closed my laptop and looked around our living room at the homework spread across the coffee table, the family photos on the walls, the life we'd built and protected. Amanda's actions had tested us, but they'd also proven something important, that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch out for, especially when they're protecting their children's future. The college fund remains safe and growing, a testament to preparation, patience, and the power of letting people reveal who they really are. As a risk assessment manager, I'd always known the importance of planning for worst-case scenarios. As a mother, I learned that sometimes those scenarios wear a familiar face. But tonight, helping my children plan their futures, I knew we'd all learn valuable lessons about trust, consequences, and the true meaning of family. Sometimes the best revenge isn't punishment, it's simply being prepared. "They don't deserve a penny of that money." My mother-in-law's voice dripped with disdain through my phone speaker. "My real grandchildren will make better use of it." I gripped my coffee mug tighter, watching my 2 children playing in the backyard through the kitchen window. Adopted or not, they were my everything. My name is Alexandra, and at 35, I never expected to be defending my children's inheritance from the woman who once welcomed me into her family with open arms. But that was before my husband Michael passed away 3 years ago, before I adopted Maya and Lucas, and before my mother-in-law Patricia decided that adopted grandchildren weren't worthy of the Mitchell family legacy. "The trust fund transfers are already complete," she continued, satisfaction evident in her tone. "Melissa's kids will benefit from that $2.5 million the way real Mitchell descendants should. You can't do anything about it." Melissa, my sister-in-law, had always been Patricia's favorite. Her 3 biological children were the true heirs in Patricia's eyes, despite Michael's explicit wishes that any future children of mine would be provided for through his family's trusts. "Interesting," I replied calmly, watching Lucas help Maya on the swing set. The same swing set Michael had insisted on building himself, determined to create the perfect backyard for our future family. "Thank you for letting me know." My composed response clearly threw Patricia off balance. "That's all you have to say," she demanded. "No screaming? No threats? I expected more drama from someone like you." Someone like me? I kept my voice level, years of working as a trust and estates attorney serving me well. What exactly do you mean by that, Patricia? You know exactly what I mean, she snapped. An outsider who thought she could just adopt her way into our family's fortune. Michael's death was tragic enough without you bringing in these strangers to claim his legacy. I closed my eyes, remembering the day Michael and I had first discussed adoption. He'd been so excited, already planning college funds and future family vacations. When the time comes, he'd said, our children will want for nothing. A month later, he was gone, but his plans for our family's future were legally secured, or so I thought. Maya and Lucas are my children, I stated firmly, and they were provided for in Michael's wishes. You know that. Patricia's laugh was sharp and bitter. Wishes can be changed, dear, especially when the original trustee, meaning me, deems it necessary. I've already signed everything over to Melissa's children. It's done. I glanced at my laptop where an email from James Morrison, the estate's executor, sat waiting. Patricia had no idea that her actions had triggered exactly the scenario Michael had prepared for. You're right about one thing, I said, allowing a small smile to cross my face. It is done. What's that supposed to mean? Patricia's voice held a note of uncertainty for the first time. It means goodbye, Patricia. I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon. I ended the call and opened James's email, my hand steady as I read through his detailed documentation of Patricia's latest power play. 3 years ago, when Michael first got sick, he pulled me aside one evening after the kids were in bed. Mom's showing her true colors, he'd said, his voice weak but determined. Promise me you'll protect our family, all of us. That night, we put in place safeguards that Patricia never knew about, including a secondary trust that would only activate if she ever tried to disenfranchise my children. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Mom told me what she did. The money is where it belongs now. Don't fight this, you'll only embarrass yourself. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the children in for lunch, helping them wash up and settle at the kitchen table. Maya, 7 years old with curious brown eyes, looked up at me as I served her sandwich. Mommy, why was Grandma Patricia yelling on the phone? Sometimes adults get confused about what's right, I explained gently, but you don't need to worry about that. You and Lucas are exactly where you belong. Lucas, at 5, was more interested in his juice box than family drama, but I caught him watching me with those intuitive eyes that reminded me so much of Michael. They might not share his DNA, but they share his heart, something Patricia had never understood. My phone rang again, James Morrison this time. Everything is proceeding as Michael planned, he said without preamble. Patricia's attempts to transfer the trust funds have triggered the secondary protocol. Would you like me to initiate the next phase? I looked at my children, happily eating their lunch, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and protected. Yes, I replied. It's time Patricia learned what family really means. Very well, James said. I'll make the calls. She should be hearing from us within the hour. As I hung up, another text from Melissa arrived. Mom's furious that you're not responding. What are you playing at? I put my phone away and joined my children for lunch. Patricia thought she had won, that she had finally found a way to erase my children from the Mitchell family legacy. She had no idea that her actions had just set in motion exactly what Michael had predicted and planned for. Tomorrow would bring revelations that would shake Patricia's smugness to its core. But for now, I had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to share with my children and a promise to keep to my late husband. Sometimes the best revenge isn't an immediate reaction, but a carefully planned response years in the making. Maya looked up from her sandwich with Michael's gentle smile. Can we go back to playing after lunch? Of course, sweetheart, I said, smoothing her hair. We have all the time in the world. The next morning, I was helping Maya with her breakfast when my phone lit up with notifications. Patricia was calling repeatedly, each missed call followed by increasingly frantic text messages. I turned my attention back to Maya's scrambled eggs, knowing exactly what had triggered her panic. Mrs. Mitchell, James Morrison's voice was crisp when I finally answered his call. Patricia received the documentation this morning. She's not taking it well. I could hear muffled shouting in the background. You can't do this. Patricia's voice pierced through. That trust belongs to my real grandchildren. Actually, Mrs. Henderson, James replied, his professional tone unwavering. What you've done is exactly what your son Michael predicted and prepared for. Your attempt to transfer the trust funds has activated Clause 23B. I smiled, remembering the day Michael had insisted on adding that clause. He'd been weak from chemotherapy, but his mind was sharp as ever. Mom will try something, he'd said. We need to make sure the kids are protected. What do you mean, Clause 23B? Patricia demanded. I'm the trustee. I have final say. Not anymore, James stated firmly. By attempting to divert the funds against the explicit terms of the trust, you've triggered an automatic removal clause. As of 9 a.m. this morning, you are no longer the trustee. Furthermore, your actions have activated the secondary trust, which doubles the original amount set aside for Alexandra's children. My phone buzzed with another call, Melissa this time. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what she would say. Her children had been promised money that was never truly available to them. That's impossible. Patricia's voice shook. Michael would never. Michael did exactly that, James interrupted. He knew you might try to discriminate against his adopted children. The documentation is quite clear. Would you like me to read his personal letter to you? The silence that followed was deafening. I could picture Patricia's face, the realization dawning that her son had known her better than she'd thought. Alexandra, James continued, addressing me now. As per Michael's instructions, you are now the sole trustee of both trusts. The combined value is approximately $5 million, all designated for Maya and Lucas's future. I heard Patricia's sharp intake of breath. Not only had she lost control of the original trust, but her actions had doubled the inheritance she tried to steal. Michael's final chess move was masterful. Thank you, James, I replied. Please make sure Patricia receives a copy of Michael's letter. As I hung up, the back door opened and Mrs. Rodriguez, our neighbor who watched Lucas during his morning therapy sessions, came in with my son. Lucas's face lit up when he saw me and he ran over for a hug. His speech therapy exercises momentarily forgotten. Mommy, I did good today. He beamed, his words clearer than they'd been a month ago. The therapy sessions were expensive, but they were helping. Patricia had always complained about the cost, suggesting we send Lucas to a state facility instead. Why waste money on speech therapy when he's not even blood? She'd said once, not realizing I could hear her. My phone buzzed again, a text from Melissa. You planned this. You and Michael conspired against us. Mom is devastated. I looked at Lucas, happily showing me the stickers he earned in therapy, and Maya carefully eating her breakfast. These were Michael's children, regardless of biology. He'd known that, planned for it, made sure they would be protected. Mrs. Alexandra, Mrs. Rodriguez said softly, there's a woman outside in a car. She's been there for 10 minutes. I glanced out the window to see Patricia's Mercedes parked across the street. She sat in the driver's seat, clutching what I assumed was Michael's letter. It's okay, I assured Mrs. Rodriguez. She won't come in. She's just learning a hard lesson about family. My phone lit up with James's message. Patricia's lawyer is reviewing the documents. Everything is ironclad. Michael was very thorough. Of course he was. Michael had spent his last months ensuring our children's future, knowing his mother might try something like this. The secondary trust was his masterstroke. Funded by his personal investments, it would only activate if Patricia tried to disenfranchise our children. Alexandra. Patricia's voice carried from outside. She'd finally gotten out of her car. We need to talk. I turned to Mrs. Rodriguez. Would you mind taking the kids to the playroom? I'll handle this. After making sure Maya and Lucas were safely out of earshot, I stepped onto the front porch. Patricia stood at the bottom of the steps, Michael's letter crumpled in her hand. How could you do this to me? She demanded, but her voice lacked its usual authority. To Melissa's children. I didn't do anything, Patricia, I replied calmly. Michael did this. He knew you try to hurt his children because they're adopted. He made sure they were protected. He was sick, she protested. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was thinking perfectly clearly, I corrected her. Clear enough to predict exactly what you do and plan accordingly. Clear enough to make sure his children, all of his children, would be taken care of. Patricia's face crumpled. But Melissa's kids have their own trust funds from their father's side. I finished for her. They don't need Michael's money. This was never about providing for them. This was about you trying to punish my children for being adopted. Through the window, I could hear Maya's laugh mixing with Lucas's excited chatter. The sounds of family, real family, filled the house Michael and I had made a home. "You've lost more than just trustee status, Patricia," I said softly. "You've lost the chance to know your grandchildren, to see them grow, to be part of their lives. That's the real tragedy here." I turned to go back inside, but her voice stopped me. "He knew me too well, didn't he?" she whispered, staring at the letter. "He knew exactly what I would do." "Yes," I agreed, "he did. The question is, now that you know what he thought of your behavior, what are you going to do about it?" I left her standing there, the morning sun casting long shadows across my front yard. Inside, my children were waiting, their future secure thanks to a father who had loved them before he even knew them. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply letting someone's true nature reveal itself and having the foresight to protect what matters most. 6 months after Patricia's failed attempt to disinherit my children, life had settled into a new rhythm. Maya had started second grade, excelling in her art classes, something that would have made Michael beam with pride. Lucas's speech therapy was showing remarkable progress, and he'd made friends with 2 other kids in his kindergarten class. I was reviewing some trust documents in my home office when an unexpected email arrived from James Morrison. "Patricia has requested a meeting. She's been attending family counseling and wants to make amends. How would you like to proceed?" The request surprised me. In the months following her failed scheme, Patricia had retreated to her country club life, while Melissa had taken her children on an extended European vacation, funded, no doubt, by their other family trusts. "Mommy," Maya's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Look what I made." She burst into the office, holding up a family portrait she'd drawn. There we were, Maya, Lucas, me, and even Michael, drawn from the photos I kept around the house. But what caught my eye was the figure she added in the corner, a grandmother with silver hair, standing slightly apart from the group. "Is that Grandma Patricia?" I asked gently. Maya nodded. "Miss Thompson said we should draw our whole family, even the ones we don't see much. Do you think Grandma Patricia will like my picture?" I studied my daughter's hopeful face, remembering Michael's words. "Family is about choices, Alex. Every day, we choose who we want to be to each other." I replied to James's email, agreeing to the meeting but with conditions. It would be at our house, on our terms, and the children's well-being would be the priority. A week later, Patricia stood on our doorstep, looking smaller somehow, less imposing than she had 6 months ago. She held a large shopping bag and wore an uncertain expression I'd never seen before. "Alexandra," she said softly, "thank you for seeing me." I led her to the living room, where Maya's family portrait now hung proudly on the wall. Her eyes fixed on it immediately, lingering on the grandmother figure in the corner. "Maya drew that," I said. "She still thinks of you as family." Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "I've been seeing a therapist," she admitted. After reading Michael's letter that day, seeing how clearly he saw through me, I realized I needed help. She reached into her shopping bag. "I found these while cleaning out my attic." She pulled out a stack of photo albums and a worn leather journal. Michael's childhood photos and his journal from the year you started adoption proceedings. I thought maybe the children would like to know more about their father. I opened the journal to a random page, catching glimpses of Michael's familiar handwriting. "Met with the adoption agency today. Can't stop thinking about the family we'll build. Mom doesn't understand yet, but she will when she meets our children." "He never gave up hope that you'd accept them," I said quietly. Patricia wiped a tear. "I was wrong, Alexandra. So terribly wrong. Not just about the money, but about what makes a family." She pulled out one final item, a small wrapped package. This was Michael's favorite book when he was Lucas's age. He used to make me read it every night, even when he was struggling with his own speech difficulties. I hadn't known that about Michael. "Lucas has the same challenges," I said. "I know," Patricia replied. "That's why, if you'll allow it, I'd like to help with his therapy. Not financially. I know that's taken care of. But I was a speech pathologist before I married into the Mitchell family. I retired years ago, but maybe." Her voice trailed off as Maya appeared in the doorway, Lucas close behind her. They stood uncertainly, looking between me and their grandmother. "Children," I said carefully, "look who's come to visit." Patricia set the book down and turned to face them fully. "Hello, Maya, Lucas. I've missed you both." Maya stepped forward first, brave as always. Did you see my picture? I drew you in it. I did see it. Patricia smiled, her voice wavering. It's beautiful. You have your father's talent for art. Lucas hung back, but his eyes fixed on the book on the coffee table. Patricia noticed his interest. That was your daddy's favorite story when he was your age, she said gently. Would you like to hear it? He looked at me for permission and I nodded. Soon, Patricia was sitting on the couch, a child on either side, reading from the worn pages of Michael's childhood book. Her voice was different now, softer, without the sharp edges of superiority that had dominated our last encounter. Watching them, I felt Michael's presence strongly. He'd known this might happen too, that given time and consequences, his mother might find her way back to the truth about family. A secondary trust wasn't just about money. It was about giving everyone time to grow, to learn, to choose who they wanted to be to each other. Maya's drawing caught the afternoon light, the family she depicted, complete with the grandmother in the corner, seeming to glow. Sometimes the happy ending isn't about winning or losing, but about finding a way back to what matters most. Michael had known that too. I left them reading and went to start dinner, sending a quick text to James. The meeting went well. Michael would be pleased. His response came moments later. He knew it would, eventually. That's why he left the door open for reconciliation in the trust terms. Your children have inherited more than money. They've inherited his wisdom about what family really means. I smiled, listening to the sounds of story time flowing from the living room. Maya's laughter, Lucas's questions, Patricia's gentle answers, the sound of a family healing, one page at a time. My heart stopped. That was almost my entire life savings, money I carefully put aside over 7 years of working double shifts at the dental clinic. But I hadn't authorized any transfer. Dr. Anderson, my patient's concerned voice snapped me back to reality. Is everything okay? Just fine, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. Let me just finish up here. My name is Olivia Anderson, and at 32, I thought I had finally gotten my life in order. After putting myself through dental school, building my practice, and saving every extra penny, I was finally ready to open my own pediatric dental clinic. The loan application was already in process, with my savings meant to be the down payment. As soon as my last patient left, I called the bank. After 20 minutes of verification questions, the representative confirmed my worst fear. The transfer had been authorized using my correct online banking credentials. The transfer was made to Margaret Wilson's account, she said. My mother-in-law, the woman who had never forgiven me for stealing her precious son, and not being good enough for the Wilson family name. With trembling fingers, I called Margaret. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting for my call. Olivia, dear, her voice dripped with false sweetness. I was wondering when you'd notice. Margaret, what have you done? That's my entire savings. Oh, don't be so dramatic. Consider it a family tax, she laughed, the sound making my skin crawl. After all, you've been living in our family's guest house for 3 years, barely paying any rent. This just makes us even. My blood boiled. The family's guest house was a run-down cottage on their property that Jake and I had completely renovated ourselves. We paid for every repair, every upgrade, while Margaret kept insisting we were getting a family discount on rent. That money was for my clinic. My voice cracked. How did you even get access to my account? Your dear husband should really be more careful with where he keeps his passwords, she said smugly. Jake's always been terrible at technology. Like father, like son, I suppose. Jake, my husband of 5 years, who still couldn't say no to his mother, who still kept all his passwords in a little notebook because he couldn't remember them. A notebook that had been suspiciously missing last week when Margaret dropped by for one of her surprise visits. Does Jake know about this? I demanded. Oh, he knows I was planning to teach you a lesson about family obligations, she said airily, though he might be a bit surprised at the method. But really, Olivia, did you think we'd let you waste all that money on some silly children's dental practice? The Wilsons have a reputation to maintain. I ended the call, my hands shaking with rage. Jake wasn't answering his phone, probably in surgery at the hospital where he worked as an anesthesiologist. But his silence spoke volumes. He'd known his mother was planning something and hadn't warned me. I sat in my office, staring at the plans for my pediatric clinic spread across my desk. The bright, welcoming waiting room designed to put nervous kids at ease. The special chairs with built-in TV screens to distract them during procedures. The separate area for children with sensory issues. Everything I dreamed of creating, now potentially ruined because my mother-in-law decided I didn't deserve success. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "Don't bother going to the police. They'll never believe you over a respected Wilson family member. Besides, he gave me access, remember?" Another buzz. "And don't even think about divorce. Our prenup is ironclad. You'll leave with nothing." I smiled grimly at her texts. Margaret had always underestimated me, seen me as the scholarship kid who'd somehow trapped her son into marriage. What she didn't know was that I'd learned from watching her manipulate everyone around her for years. I'd been preparing for something like this. Opening my laptop, I pulled up a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were screenshots of every suspicious conversation, every threatening email, every manipulative text Margaret had sent over the years. I had recordings of her friendly visits that were actually thinly veiled attempts to sabotage my career, and most importantly, I had proof that she'd been planning this theft for months. Margaret thought she had won, that she'd finally put me in my place, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't just some naive girl anymore. I was a professional who'd fought for everything I had, who'd learned to document every interaction because I knew this day would come. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd saved months ago, just in case. "Hello, Mr. Patterson. This is Olivia Anderson. Remember when you said to call if I ever needed legal help with my mother-in-law? I think it's time." As I hung up, another text from Margaret arrived. "Family dinner tomorrow night. Don't even think about making excuses, and wear something presentable for once." I typed back a simple "wouldn't miss it" and started making calls. Margaret wanted to play games. Fine, but she was about to learn that I knew how to play them too. 1 week. That's all I needed to set everything in motion. Margaret thought she held all the cards, but she had no idea what was coming. After all, I hadn't spent 3 years married to her son without learning a few things about the Wilson family secrets. Let her gloat for now. In 7 days, she'd learn exactly why you should never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose. The Wilson family mansion loomed before me as I pulled into the circular driveway for dinner. Through the large bay windows, I could see Margaret holding court in the formal dining room, probably bragging about her latest charity board position or country club drama. I smoothed down my designer dress. The one Margaret had once sneered was trying too hard, and checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror. Everything had to be perfect tonight. I needed Margaret comfortable, confident in her victory. Jake was waiting at the front door, looking uncomfortable in his suit. "Liv, we need to talk," he started, reaching for my arm. I stepped past him, my heels clicking on the marble floor. "Yes, we certainly do, but not now." The past week had been enlightening. While Jake had been sleeping in the guest room, unable to meet my eyes, I'd been busy. Mr. Patterson hadn't just been helpful. He'd been revelatory. "Margaret, darling." I called out, embracing my mother-in-law with practiced warmth. "That Hermes scarf is stunning. New purchase?" She preened, adjusting the silk at her throat. "Just a little treat to myself. We all deserve to splurge sometimes, don't we?" I caught the pointed look she threw at Jake. He shifted uncomfortably, tugging at his collar. "Good, let him squirm." Dinner was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Margaret dominated the conversation, dropping subtle digs about my humble background and how some people just didn't understand family loyalty. "Oh, speaking of family," I interjected during dessert, "I've been meaning to ask. How's the foundation doing, Margaret?" Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "The foundation?" "The Wilson Family Foundation," I clarified, taking a delicate sip of wine. "The one that handles all the family's charitable giving." I was just curious about the annual audit. The color drained from Margaret's face. Beside me, Jake stiffened. "That's family business," Margaret snapped. "Something you clearly don't understand." I smiled, setting down my wine glass. "Actually, I understand perfectly, especially after speaking with Mr. Patterson. You remember him. The Foundation's former legal counsel." The silence that fell over the table was deafening. Margaret's hands began to shake slightly as she set down her fork. "Mr. Patterson has been retired for years," she said dismissively, but I caught the tremor in her voice. "Oh, he's still quite sharp," I assured her, "especially about certain creative accounting practices. like using the foundation to hide personal expenses or transferring large sums of money without proper documentation. Jake's head snapped up. Mother? What is she talking about? Margaret's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. Nothing, darling. Just Olivia being dramatic as usual. Really? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my photos. So these bank statements showing foundation money being used for your jewelry, your vacations, your gambling debts, those are all dramatic too. Where did you get those? Margaret hissed. Let's just say Mr. Patterson kept very detailed records. He felt quite guilty about helping cover up your misuse of charitable funds all these years. When I explained how you'd stolen my savings, he was very eager to make amends. Jake was staring at his mother, realization dawning on his face. The foundation money. That's why Dad left, isn't it? He found out? Margaret's composure cracked. Your father didn't understand. The foundation's money is family money. It's charitable donation money, I corrected. Money that was supposed to help people, not fund your lifestyle. The IRS tends to frown on that sort of thing. You wouldn't dare, Margaret snarled. You'll destroy this family. No, Margaret. You did that when you decided to steal from me. I stood up, smoothing my dress. You have 24 hours to return my money. Every penny, or Mr. Patterson's records go to the IRS and the State Attorney General's office. Olivia. Jake finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Did you know about this? About the foundation? I turned to my husband, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. No, not until your mother decided to teach me a lesson about family. Funny how karma works, isn't it? Margaret's perfectly manicured hands gripped the table. This is blackmail. This is justice, I corrected. And unlike you, I have proof of everything. 24 hours, Margaret? Tick-tock. I walked out of the dining room, pausing in the doorway. Oh, and one more thing. I'm keeping screenshots of our banking records. If anything happens to that money before I get it back, the authorities will be very interested in how it disappeared. Jake followed me outside, grabbing my arm. Wait, you can't just drop this bomb and leave. I gently removed his hand. Actually, I can. And while we're on the subject of bombs, I've filed for divorce. What? Liv, please, we can work this out. Can we? You knew she was planning something. You knew she had my passwords, and you did nothing. I didn't think she'd actually. Exactly. You never think she'll actually go too far. But she always does, and you always choose her side. I reached into my purse and handed him an envelope. These are the divorce papers. I suggest you read them carefully, especially the part about what happens if your mother doesn't return my money. His face crumpled. I love you. Liv. No, Jake, you love the idea of me, the wife who puts up with your mother's abuse, who sacrifices everything to keep the peace. But that woman's gone, and you helped kill her. I got into my car, watching in the rearview mirror as Jake stood in the driveway looking lost. Behind him, through the dining room window, I could see Margaret frantically making phone calls. Let her panic. Let her try to find a way out of this mess. She had 24 hours to learn that some lessons cut both ways, and this lesson was just beginning. The next morning, my phone rang exactly at 9 a.m. Margaret's number. I let it go to voicemail, sipping my coffee as I reviewed the divorce papers with my lawyer via Zoom. She's been calling nonstop, Jake texted. Please answer her. I ignored him too. The ball was in their court, and I wasn't about to make this easier for them. At 11:43 a.m., the bank notification popped up. Transfer received. $175,000 from account ending in 4872. Seconds later, another notification. Transfer received. $25,000 from account ending in 4872. I smiled. The extra $25,000 was a nice touch, probably Margaret's attempt to buy my silence. She still didn't understand that this wasn't about money. My phone buzzed again. Margaret. Fine, I answered. You've got your money back. With interest, I see. Now destroy those documents and we can put this unfortunate incident behind us. Actually, I said, keeping my voice level. Those documents are staying exactly where they are. Consider them my insurance policy. You little, she sputtered. I gave you back your money. Yes, you did. After committing theft and financial fraud. But this isn't just about the money, Margaret. This is about years of manipulation, of treating me like I was beneath you. I am trying to make this right. No, you're trying to protect yourself. There's a difference. I pause, letting my words sink in. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to step down from the foundation's board. Quietly, you're going to stop interfering in my life. And you're going to accept that Jake and I are getting divorced. Never, she hissed. Then I guess the IRS will be very interested in those records. Your choice. The line went silent for a moment. You've changed, she finally said. No, Margaret, I just stopped letting you define who I am. After hanging up, I drove to the bank and transferred the money to a new account, one without any connection to the Wilsons. Then I headed to the real estate office where I'd been secretly meeting with an agent. 2 hours later, I signed the lease on my new dental clinic space. It wasn't the building I'd originally planned on, but it was better. Closer to the hospital, with more parking and better visibility. Jake was waiting at the cottage when I got home. Mother resigned from the foundation, he said quietly. Dad called, he's coming back to take over. I nodded, unlocking the door. Good. Liv, please, I know I messed up. But I love you. I turned to face him. You know what I realized this week? Love shouldn't require constant vigilance. I shouldn't have to protect myself from the people who claim to love me. I'll do better, he promised. I'll stand up to her. You're missing the point, Jake. You shouldn't have to do better. You should have done right by me from the start. I handed him a business card. This is my new office address. Send the signed divorce papers there. 6 months later, my pediatric dental clinic opened its doors. The waiting room was exactly as I'd imagined. Bright, welcoming, and filled with happy kids. Jake had signed the divorce papers without contesting anything. His father, back in charge of the foundation, had made a generous donation to my clinic's program for underprivileged children. Margaret? She'd moved to Florida, supposedly for her health. The last I heard, she was telling anyone who would listen that she'd chosen to step down from the foundation to focus on personal growth. I kept the documents about her financial misdeeds safely stored with Mr. Patterson. Not because I planned to use them, but because some lessons need to be remembered. Yesterday, I received a letter from a family lawyer I'd never met. Inside was a note from Jake's father. I should have done this years ago. The foundation is in better hands now. Keep making a difference. Attached was proof that he'd established a permanent grant in my clinic's name. Funds that would help provide dental care to children who couldn't afford it. Funds that Margaret could never touch. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about building something better from the ashes of what was destroyed. Margaret tried to tear me down, but instead, she gave me the push I needed to build something stronger. And that's a lesson worth learning. Your father left everything to Olivia, dear. The transfer is already complete. My mother-in-law's voice dripped with false sympathy through the phone. He always thought of her as his real daughter anyway. I gripped my coffee mug tightly, the morning sunlight streaming through my kitchen window suddenly feeling cold. My father-in-law's funeral was barely 2 weeks ago, and here was Patricia dropping this bomb on me while I was still grieving. My name is Madison Carter, and at 34, I just discovered my mother-in-law had somehow redirected my entire inheritance to my sister-in-law's account. The same inheritance my father-in-law Richard had specifically promised would help fund the children's hospital wing I'd been working towards for the past 5 years. That's impossible, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. Richard and I discussed his plans for the hospital wing just last month. He even signed the preliminary paperwork. Patricia's laugh was sharp, cutting. Oh honey, Richard changed his mind after your last visit. He realized Olivia needed the money more. After all, she's been such a devoted daughter, always by our side, unlike some people who only visit when they need something. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. While I'd spent the last 5 years working double shifts as a pediatric surgeon and visiting Richard during every free moment, Olivia had been traveling the world on her father's dime, only showing up when she needed to replenish her bank account. I want to see the paperwork, I demanded, my professional composure kicking in. Years of handling medical emergencies had taught me to stay calm under pressure. That won't be necessary, Patricia replied smoothly. Everything's been handled legally. Olivia's already planning to use the money for her new lifestyle coaching business. Such a wonderful investment, don't you think? I ended the call without responding, my mind racing. Something wasn't right. Richard had been excited about the hospital wing, proud that I wanted to continue his legacy of helping others. He'd built his medical equipment company from nothing, always emphasizing the importance of giving back. I dialed James Morton's number with slightly shaking hands. As Richard's longtime executor and friend, he would know the truth. The line you're trying to reach is no longer in service. Strange. James had been at the funeral, looking troubled as he spoke with Patricia. I'd meant to talk to him then, but Olivia had created a scene about the funeral arrangements, demanding changes that had consumed everyone's attention. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Sorry sis, guess Daddy finally saw through your little act. Don't worry, I'll make much better use of the money than some boring hospital wing." I stared at the message, memories flooding back. Richard's proud smile when I graduated medical school. His weekly visits to my pediatric ward, bringing toys for the children. The long conversations we'd had about expanding healthcare access for underprivileged kids. None of it matched with Patricia's claim. I opened my laptop and logged into my email, searching for my last correspondence with James. 3 weeks ago, he'd sent me the draft documents for the hospital wing trust, copying Richard. The email was gone. A knock at my door startled me. Opening it, I found a young courier holding an envelope. "Dr. Carter, this was to be delivered to you 2 weeks after Mr. Harrison's funeral. Time-sensitive material." The envelope bore James Morton's law firm logo. Inside was a single USB drive and a handwritten note. "Madison, if you're reading this, my suspicions were correct. Patricia has been making concerning moves regarding Richard's estate. I've documented everything, including conversations that might interest you. The attached drive contains files you'll need. Be careful who you trust. James." My hands trembled as I plugged in the USB drive. Folders appeared, meticulously labeled with dates stretching back 6 months. The first audio file made my blood run cold. Patricia's voice emerged from my speakers. "James, you need to adjust those documents. Richard's not thinking clearly with all these medications. Olivia deserves that inheritance, not some sanctimonious doctor who married into our family. Make it happen, or I'll have to remind you about that incident from 2019. I sat back, my mind racing. This wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. This was about justice, about honoring Richard's wishes, about exposing the truth. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Olivia. "Bitevu found your precious hospital wing proposals in Daddy's study. Such a shame they accidentally ended up in the shredder." I took a deep breath, remembering what Richard always said about patients in difficult situations. Patricia and Olivia thought they had won, that I would accept their manipulation like I had so many times before for the sake of family peace. Not this time. I began copying the files from James's drive, my determination growing with each damning piece of evidence. They had no idea what was coming. After all, I wasn't just Richard's daughter-in-law. I was the woman who'd earned his respect, who shared his vision for helping others, who'd promised to continue his legacy. And I intended to keep that promise, whether Patricia and Olivia liked it or not. The truth was in these files. Now I just had to use it. I spent the next 3 days methodically going through James's files, each document and recording revealing more of Patricia and Olivia's scheme. There were emails between them discussing how to manipulate Richard's medications to keep him confused during his final weeks. Voice recordings of Olivia pressuring the hospital staff to limit my visits. Even a draft of a forged will dated just days before Richard's death. But what caught my attention was a folder labeled Original Trust Documentation, Secured Copy. Inside were scanned copies of the real documents Richard had signed, complete with notarized timestamps and witness signatures. The hospital wing wasn't just a plan. It was legally binding. My phone rang, displaying Patricia's number. I let it go to voicemail. "Madison dear," her voice dripped honey-coated venom. "Olivia and I are meeting with the hospital board tomorrow to withdraw Richard's pledged donation. I thought you'd want to know since you work there. Don't make this awkward by interfering. Remember, family comes first." Family comes first. How many times had she used that phrase to manipulate situations in Olivia's favor? I picked up my phone and dialed Dr. Sarah Thompson, the hospital board's chairperson. "Sarah, we need to talk. It's about Richard's donation." An hour later, I sat in Sarah's office, James's files spread across her desk. Her face grew increasingly grave as she reviewed the documents. This is disturbing, she said, pausing an audio recording of Patricia threatening James. We had no idea. The board meeting tomorrow. Patricia presented it as a formal transfer of funds to their new charitable foundation. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Their new foundation. Let me guess. With Olivia as the director. Sarah nodded. They submitted paperwork yesterday. But these documents you've brought, especially the original trust agreement. Madison, this changes everything. I need your help, Sarah. Richard wanted that pediatric wing built. He spent hours with our young patients, saw how desperately we need the extra space and resources. I can't let Patricia and Olivia destroy that. Sarah's eyes hardened with determination. The board meeting is at 10 a.m. Be there. That evening, another text arrived from Olivia. Hope you're not too attached to your position at the hospital. It would be such a shame if the new foundation decided to withdraw all support. I smiled, thinking of the evidence safely backed up on multiple drives. Let them play their games. The next morning, I arrived early at the hospital, dressed in my most professional suit. Patricia and Olivia were already there, holding court in the conference room. Olivia wore designer clothes that still had tags attached. Apparently, she'd already started spending her ill-gotten inheritance. Oh, Madison. Patricia's eyes widened in fake concern. This is a private board meeting. Perhaps you misunderstood. Actually, Sarah stepped in. I invited her. Shall we begin? Patricia stood, smoothing her expensive blazer. Of course. As I explained in my email, we're here to formally withdraw Richard's pledge and redirect the funds to our new charitable foundation. Olivia has some wonderful ideas for wellness retreats. Before we proceed, Sarah interrupted. We have some documents to review. She began distributing copies of the files I provided. Patricia's face paled as she recognized the trust agreement. Olivia grabbed a page, her perfectly manicured nails crumpling the paper. Where did you get these? Patricia demanded. From James Morton, I replied calmly. Richard's executor. The one you threatened and forced into hiding. He left quite a paper trail. These are old documents. Olivia jumped in, her voice shrill. Daddy changed his mind. He told me so himself. Really? I pressed play on my laptop and Richard's voice filled the room. A recording from just 3 weeks before his death. Madison, I need you to know how proud I am. This hospital wing, it's everything I hoped for. Promise me you'll see it through, no matter what Patricia and Olivia might try. James has everything documented. Patricia's composure cracked. You recorded him? How dare you? Actually, I replied, James did. After you tried to bribe him to change the trust documents. There's quite a collection here. Would you like to hear your conversation about adjusting Richard's medication schedule? Or perhaps the one where you discussed backdating the new will? The board members murmured in shock. Sarah cleared her throat. In light of this evidence, the board will not be authorizing any changes to the original trust agreement. Furthermore, we'll be launching a formal investigation into these allegations of fraud and elder abuse. Olivia stood up so fast her chair toppled over. You can't do this. That money is mine. Daddy promised. Sit down. Patricia hissed, but it was too late. Her carefully constructed scheme was unraveling. The funds, Sarah continued firmly, will remain allocated to the pediatric wing project as per Richard's legally documented wishes. Dr. Carter will continue to oversee the development as originally planned. I watched Patricia's face contort with fury. This isn't over, she spat. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I replied, standing to face her, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. I have copies of everything. Every threat, every manipulated document, every attempt to change Richard's wishes. Would you like to know what else James documented? Patricia's face went from red to white. Without another word, she grabbed her designer handbag and stormed out, Olivia trailing behind her like a petulant child. As the board meeting concluded, Sarah touched my arm. Richard would be proud of you, Madison. The pediatric wing, it's going to change so many lives. I nodded, thinking of Richard's last weeks, how despite Patricia's interference, he'd still managed to leave me the tools to fight back. To protect his real legacy. My phone buzzed one last time, another text from Olivia. You'll regret this. Nobody crosses our family. I smiled, thinking of the additional files I hadn't yet revealed. The ones that would ensure Patricia and Olivia could never interfere again. Family comes first, I whispered to myself. And Richard was my family too. 3 months after the board meeting showdown, I stood in the construction site of the new pediatric wing, watching workers install the foundation. The morning sun caught the sign at the entrance, Richard Harrison Memorial Pediatric Center, where every child matters. Patricia and Olivia hadn't gone quietly, of course. They tried everything from legal threats to social media smear campaigns. But James's meticulous documentation had proven invaluable. When their lawyer saw the evidence, he withdrew from the case immediately. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "You need to see this." Attached was a link to a local news article. Prominent socialite and daughter under investigation for financial fraud. I smiled, remembering the anonymous tip I'd sent to the Financial Crimes Unit about Patricia and Olivia's other schemes. The ones James had uncovered involving Richard's company funds. Apparently, the hospital trust wasn't the only money they tried to manipulate. "Dr. Carter," a small voice called out. I turned to find Tommy, one of my long-term patients, approaching in his wheelchair. His mother pushed him gently, smiling. "Look what I found in my dad's old pictures." Tommy held up a photograph. It showed Richard kneeling beside a much younger Tommy, both of them grinning as they played with a toy stethoscope. "He visited me every week when I was first admitted," Tommy explained. "Said someday there'd be a special place here for kids like me. He never forgot his promise." I blinked back tears, remembering Richard's words. Sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what we leave behind, but who we trust to carry it forward. Later that afternoon, as I reviewed plans in my office, my secretary announced an unexpected visitor. James Morton stood in my doorway, looking tired but relieved. "I think it's safe to come back now," he said, settling into a chair. "Patricia's other victims are coming forward. She won't be able to threaten anyone anymore." "Other victims?" James nodded grimly. Richard suspected she'd been embezzling from the company for years, funneling money to Olivia's failed ventures. That's why he set up the hospital trust separately, with those special provisions. He knew they'd try something. "He knew," I whispered. "Why do you think I had all those recordings?" Richard asked me to document everything. He wanted to protect you, and his real legacy. I thought about all the times Richard had insisted on reviewing the hospital plans, how he'd made sure every detail was legally secured. He'd been preparing for this all along. My phone buzzed again. An email from Olivia's private investigator, the one she hired to dig up dirt on me. "I've been expecting this, Ms. Carter. Given recent developments, I feel you should know that your sister-in-law hired me to fabricate evidence against you. I've attached our correspondence. I cannot be part of such activities. My sincere apologies." Another piece of evidence for the growing investigation. Patricia and Olivia had overplayed their hand, and now their entire world was crumbling. The construction foreman called me outside to review some final details. As I stood there, watching the pediatric wing take shape, I felt Richard's presence strongly. "We did it," I whispered. "Your legacy is safe." 6 months later, I received 2 letters. The first was from Patricia's new lawyer, requesting a settlement discussion. The second was from Olivia, postmarked from a small town where she'd apparently fled when the fraud investigation intensified. "Madison, you won. Are you happy now? Everything we had is gone. Mom's facing charges, my accounts are frozen, and all because you couldn't just let us have what we deserved. I hope you can live with yourself." I placed both letters in a folder marked Evidence and turned back to my computer, where pictures of smiling children filled the screen, future patients of the Richard Harrison Memorial Pediatric Center. Living with myself wouldn't be a problem at all. Yesterday, as I gave Sarah a tour of the nearly completed wing, she asked if I regretted how things had turned out with my in-laws. "No," I replied honestly. "Richard taught me that real family isn't about blood or marriage. It's about who you choose to become and what you leave behind." This, I gestured to the bright, welcoming spaces designed for healing. This is his real legacy, and I'll always be proud to be part of it. As I left work that evening, I passed Richard's photograph in the hospital lobby. He was smiling that knowing smile of his, the one that always made me feel like he could see right through people's pretenses. "You were right," I whispered to his image. "Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with anger, but with patience, preparation, and truth." The truth had finally set everything right.